I'm going to show you how to look up tasks via the Aria Operations REST API. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Brian Watrous from VVork. If this is your first time here and you want to learn about automating, programming, and monitoring in VMware environments, you're in the right place. Aria Operations allows you to perform day 2 operations on objects such as virtual machines. For example, I could change the number of virtual CPUs in a virtual machine, or I could delete its unused snapshots. Again, these and other tasks can be performed on objects in the Aria Operations user interface, and we can track what's going on with those tasks by using the Aria Operations REST API. So let's see how to do that over in the lab environment. All right, here in the lab environment, as you can see, I'm already logged into Aria Operations. And I've gone into Environment Object Browser, where I can traverse my entire infrastructure. I've gone down into my infrastructure to this machine here called app-01, some sort of application server. Now, the reason why I'm here in Aria Operations is I want to show you that if you select an object in the Aria Ops user interface and go to the Actions drop-down list, you have a number of different day 2 operations that you can perform on virtual machines. Other objects support other day 2 operations, but let's focus on virtual machine day 2 operations since we're all familiar with virtual machines. So what we can do here in theory is do something such as let's change the number of CPUs in this virtual machine. So we'll go ahead and select this. Actually, just before we do, over in the vSphere client, I should point out that that virtual machine currently has 2 virtual CPUs. But what if we wanted to drop that down to 1 virtual CPU? Well, to do that, again, we would go to Object Browser, select the virtual machine, go to Actions, and we could choose Set CPU Count for Virtual Machine. Now, as you can see, it's giving us information about the current number of CPUs, and we're going to change the new number of virtual CPUs to 1. And we'll then click on the Begin Action button. Now, here's the first thing I really want you to see. Notice that the user interface provides you an ID for the task that we just kicked off. Now, as I'm sure you've already figured out, you're going to be able to use this task ID when using the Aria Operations REST API. So you've got information here in the user interface, but I'll also show you how you can look this information up through the API. Now, we could either go directly there, or we could click on Recent Tasks and find that task, or we could go into, where's it hiding, Administrator, Recent Tasks. One or another, we can go in and look up this task. So let's go ahead and click on the task. And what I'd like you to see is that my environment is not working. Notice this nasty error message. Something's wrong with the connection to the vCenter server in my lab environment. It's Friday. I don't particularly feel like troubleshooting this, so I'm going to talk conceptually from here on out. But notice that this task is failing. So as we switch over now to Postman, let's keep in fact that that task actually failed. As you can see, I've defined a pair of REST requests, one that's going to get information about all of the tasks, and another that's going to look up just one task. Now, let's jump straight to that one. If you want to look up one task, you already know by looking in the Aria Operations user interface, you know where to get that task ID. We just saw it. Or you can get the task ID that you want to look up by running get all tasks, because that will show you all the tasks and their corresponding IDs. So let's go look at get all tasks. All right, at this point, this particular URL should be fairly self-explanatory. If you need to, you could go look this up in the API documentation, but let's just jump to the key thing here in the endpoint URL. The word tasks is used to look up all of the tasks. On the other hand, if you want to look up one task, it's the same URL, but you pass in a task ID. Let's go back to get all tasks. And in here, you'll notice that I have some fairly similar code to what I have shown you in other previous requests. So the point of this post response script is to take whatever response ID I get back and look in the response to find the task IDs and just memorize one of them. Once again, I'm using square bracket 0, square bracket to say, let's just remember the first task ID. Now, I'm just about to run this request. Let me clear this previous run so it's really obvious what's going on here. We're about to run this request, but for reasons I've already shown you over in Aria Operations user interface, this is not going to go through quite right, but you'll get the idea anyways. So I'm going to click on send, and you'll notice a couple things happen. I get back a status 200. Notice that the error message in the bottom right hand corner is telling us that there's something wrong with the code in my script. There is no problem with the request that I sent. We got back a 200, so there's no problem with the request, but there is a problem with my code. I'll tell you what that problem is in a moment. Now, the response that we got back, again, we got back a successful response. The response that we got back would provide an entry for each of the tasks that are currently queued up or have completed running. Now, in my environment, as we just saw in the Aria Operations user interface, I don't have any tasks, and therefore my response body here is not terribly interesting. But this is where you would be able to look up all the different tasks, learn what the name is of each task, find out what the ID is for each task, and so forth. So using the skills that you've developed so far in the previous videos, if you have tasks in your Aria Operations environment and do this same request in your environment, you should see more interesting information here in the response body. But what I'd like to do is talk about that error message down in the lower right hand corner again. Again, the error message was not about the response or the request. The error message is telling us that there's a problem with my code up above. The problem with my code up above is that, as you can see on line number 8 and line number 9, I'm indexing into this task status list array. I'm going for element 0, but there is no element 0. My array is empty. So you can't even say square bracket 0 square bracket, because that would be the first entry in that array. So the reason why we're getting the error message that you see in the bottom right hand corner is simply because my code here, specifically line 7 through 9, is not sophisticated enough to detect if we got back 0 tasks from our REST request. But this is just JavaScript code. I'm sure you could put a test in to handle the situation more gracefully, like I'm seeing here, handle it more gracefully if your task status list array is empty. Join me in the next video as we continue exploring the Aria Operations REST API.